Hey, it's Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica in Los Angeles, California. Here today to show you how to get to Urdhva Kukkutasana from headstand. I have a separate video that shows you how to get there from handstand, but that's sort of like the harder way of getting in. So if you want to learn that, check it out. You can click on the eye in the top right hand corner. But coming into Urdhva Kukkutasana from headstand is a lot more similar to headstand to crow than handstand. So let's review how we get to crow from headstand first. Of course, this assumes that you know how to do a headstand. And if you don't know how to do a headstand, that's me on rewind mode, you can always just put your knees right on your triceps. Okay, so you can do it either way. So when you come into your headstand, coming into crow on this one, when you come down, make sure your knees are way up in your armpits. Now we're just doing a brief review because I have a whole video on this and you can check that one out also by clicking on the eye. But the main points I want to make right now are, you see how high my hips are here? It's propelling my weight into my head. In order to come into just a simple crow, I need to shift the balance of my weight backwards. So now you notice how my weight goes from my head down into more my hands, my arms. As my tush goes back, remember it's not a movement of lifting my head, but of moving it forward, like a turtle coming out of its shell to find my balance here. Basically, anytime that I'm trying to find balance, particularly from a headstand, I'm trying to balance out what's in front of me with what's in back of me. Okay? So, one more time, I just want you to look more at the lines than what's happening. So once I come into my headstand or just put my knees on my arms, whichever one I prefer, my knees need to go way up towards my armpits. You see how that rounds my spine, okay? Especially as I drop my hips. Because when the spine is round, going in like a rainbow shape, then it's got heaviness on both sides, right? So this part is going down through my head, this part is going down through my hips. If I don't have a round spine and my hips are up here, then my body weight is pushing straight into my head. That's not going to help me to get off said head. So I have to make my rainbow and then tilt the rainbow towards the feet because I need to get off the head, right? So one more time, I'm just going to start from here this time. As my tush goes low, here's my rainbow of fruit flavors. I shift my body weight backwards because I've got too much in my head. I have to become light on my head. And then, again, not up, but forward to create a balance between what's in front of me and what's in back. And then if I want to, I can lift from my core and straighten my arms to get into my crow position. Now again, if you want more extensive instruction on that, just be sure to check out my headstand to crow video. Now, let's talk about getting into Kukkutasana. First thing you need to be able to do, well, forget about first thing. There's so many things you need to be able to do, but you need to be able to get into a lotus, right? You can't do a lotus crow if you don't know how to do a lotus. So, you can have a wall behind you if you want to, just for this part. As I lift up into my headstand, to come into the lotus position, bend one knee, whichever leg you like better getting into lotus, and just know that sometimes it's easier to get in upside down than it is sitting. So my foot comes towards my thigh, and see how my knee is still pointing towards you a little bit? I try to move my foot as close to my hip as possible. Now, this is my right leg that's bent. I push it backwards. Okay, this is important. Knee goes back, top leg doesn't bend backwards, but turns out externally, so my foot goes midline. You see, so not here, but here. So knee goes out, foot goes in.
I continue to press the right knee back so that there's some space for my left foot to come in front. Does that make sense? If this knee is forward, I can't get my leg there. But if I use the leverage of my foot on my leg to really shift the knee backwards, then I can get that foot in. And it helps to sort of squiggle down so you have your lotus. Okay. So, I need a fancier setup with like 3 camera angles so I don't have to keep turning around because so much effort turning around. Okay, we have our full lotus, right? Now here's the thing. When you're practicing coming from headstand into an arm balance, if you feel like you need a wall behind you, you can't have the wall too close, otherwise you won't be able to lift up. Because remember, the head is not going up, it's going forward, and you don't really want to smack your head on the wall, right? So, here we go. Make sure you have a nice base, right? Equilateral triangle, palms are flat. I lift up and come into my lotus. Okay, so foot comes in, my knee is forward, I need to push it way back. Other leg externally rotates and squishes in. Now, when you're coming into your Urdhva Kukkutasana, you need to make sure your knees are wide enough that they're going to hit your arms. So you don't want a super narrow lotus on this one. You're going to go a little bit wide, in fact. As you come down, we come down in a C curve, not in like a waterfall. So the mistake that people make is they come straight down and their knees prop on their elbows, and look where my hips are in space. Think like a tent. Right now, my knees are like a pole that is pressing my tent upward, and I have no mobility. Like there's nowhere for me to go here. What's more, it's really, really pressing my head into the floor. There's going to be no movement here with my knees at my elbows. And so, what we need instead to create mobility is my knees not at my elbows where they're just going to stick my butt in the air and make sure they don't go anywhere, but rather a C curve that pulls my knees into my armpits. So that once I fold at the waist, I continue curling in. Now, I have to keep my legs a little high or they're going to hit my arms, right? So as I'm curling forward, I try to get all the way to my armpits. Now look where my hips are in space now. Behind my knees, which means I do have room now to do exactly what I did in my crow, which is to say, lower my tush, right, to create that balance of power. Where does my head go? Forward. And then I can press up into my Urdhva Kukkutasana. And you know what? Your knees are pretty wide on this one, so you can totally come out of this one through your crow as well. Okay? So let's try that one more time. The most important thing is that the knees must curl in and get to your armpits. If the knees are propped on your elbows, you have no leverage. You have no teeter-totter to balance you out in this pose. So, head comes down, hands in an equilateral triangle, coming up into your headstand, however you like to come up into a headstand. Your foot comes in, and you want it as close to your hip as possible. Right now, my knee is pointing forward, remember? Then, pressing into my foot to help move the knee way backwards. I externally rotate my top foot. So instead of toes facing forward, they're facing sideways. Bend my knee out to the side, pulling the foot in front of your leg, or my leg, I guess, and squishing it in. As I come down, I curl in. Making sure that I'm clearing those arms, because once I hit the arms, I get stuck. Pulling my knees all the way up into my armpits. My tush comes down to balance out what's in back with what's in front, as my head moves forward in space to complete the pose. Again, to exit, I can just unravel my legs into my crow position, and voila, you did it. Or I did it. I don't know if you did it. Did you do it? I hope you did it. This is Shana Meyerson with YOGAthletica in Los Angeles, California. Hope you have fun with this one. I do.